There's a certain kind of pain that doesn't scream, it doesn't throw things or raise its voice. It just gets quiet, it stops trying, it stops explaining, it stops showing up. And that silence is loud. We live in a world that constantly tells us to speak up, to fight, to demand our worth. But what happens when we've done all that, and it still doesn't matter? What happens when you've pleaded for understanding, when you've cried in front of people who were supposed to care, when you've asked for love in a language that only made you feel smaller? Here's what happens. You go silent. But make no mistake, your silence isn't weakness. It isn't surrender. It is strength that's been exhausted. It is dignity that refuses to be dragged any further. It is self-respect wrapped in heartbreak. Begging says, I still believe you can love me better. Silence says, I finally believe I deserve more than this. You see, people often ignore your words because they think you'll always come back. They don't listen when you cry because your voice has always been soft, kind, forgiving. But silence is different. Silence doesn't negotiate. Silence doesn't need validation. Silence walks away, not because it wants to, but because it has to. And that's what makes it hurt more. Not just for them, but for you too. Because going silent doesn't mean you don't care. It means you cared too deeply, for too long. And now, for your own survival, you've let go. There's a sacred power in reaching that point. And if you're there right now, if your silence is the only thing you have left, let me tell you something. You are not cold. You are not heartless. You are healing. You are reclaiming your energy. You are learning that begging is not proof of love. It's the absence of boundaries. And the moment you stop begging and go quiet, that's the moment you finally start choosing you. People think silence is void. They think it's absence, that it's cold. But the truth is, silence is anything but empty. Silence is crowded. It's full of everything you wanted to say, but didn't. Everything you tried to express, but couldn't find the words for. Everything you buried inside just to keep the peace, keep the connection, keep them. You know that feeling, right? When you're mid-conversation, mid-conflict, and you stop mid-sentence, not because you've run out of things to say, but because you realize they're not listening, not really. They hear the sound of your voice, but they don't feel your pain. They listen to respond, not to understand. So you start pulling back, you start choosing silence, not because it's easier, but because you're exhausted. Because explaining yourself has become a full-time job, with no paycheck and no days off. And the silence that follows, it's not a weapon, it's a wound. It's all the late-night overthinking, all the swallowed words, all the emotional labor that no one ever saw. It's the way you screamed into your pillow, instead of raising your voice. It's the way you showed up for others, even when your own heart was breaking. It's the I'm fine when you weren't. It's the don't worry about it, when it was all you thought about. You don't go silent because you stopped caring. You go silent because you cared too much, and it was killing you. And what most people will never understand is that your silence didn't come out of nowhere. It came after countless moments of trying, really trying to be heard, to be seen, to be chosen. So when the silence finally comes, it's not passive, it's intentional. It's not about revenge, it's about reclaiming yourself. It's the point where you realize that shouting your needs won't make someone ready to meet them, and that your worth isn't measured by how loud you can beg, but how gently you can walk away when nothing changes. Silence becomes your sanctuary, not because it's peaceful at first, but because it's honest. It strips away the illusion that things are okay. It holds space for grief, for healing, for truth. And slowly that silence starts speaking back to you, not with the noise of the world, but with the wisdom of your soul. It tells you, you've done enough, you've said enough, you are enough. Let's pause here. Not because the story ends, but because something real is beginning. The moment where your silence becomes your strength, not your shame. The moment where your silence finally makes space for you. There's something heartbreaking about begging, not because it makes you weak, but because it shows how deeply you hoped. Begging is the emotional equivalent of reaching out in the dark, praying someone will catch your hand. It's raw, vulnerable, honest. It's saying, please, please see me, please care, please stop hurting me, please stay. And for a while you believe that if you just love harder, give more, explain better, they'll get it, they'll wake up, they'll change. You bend, you shrink, you sacrifice pieces of yourself for the chance that they'll finally love you the way you deserve. But begging doesn't fix anything. It only delays the moment you have to face the truth. The person you're begging isn't listening, or worse, they are, and they still don't care enough to show up differently. Begging is full of hope, but sometimes that hope is dangerous. It keeps you stuck in places that don't nurture you. It keeps you tied to people who only respond when you're in pain. And that's the kind of hope that slowly breaks your heart, one unanswered plea at a time. Then one day, something shifts. not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, deep inside. It's the day you stop begging, the day you don't send the long message, the day you don't try to fix it, the day you feel the ache, but you don't chase anymore. That's when silence steps in. And silence is not about giving up on them. It's about finally choosing you. Silence isn't wrapped in hope, it's wrapped in truth. And the truth is, if someone doesn't see your worth, your pain, your heart, after all the ways you've tried to show it, that's not your failure, that's your freedom. It takes so much more strength to go quiet than to beg, because silence isn't about getting a reaction. It's not a performance, it's not a manipulation, it's a moment of clarity, where you see things for what they are, not what you wish they could be. And when you step into that silence, when you stop asking for what should have been freely given, you begin to hear a voice that matters more than any other, your own. That voice says, I deserve love that doesn't have to be earned. I deserve respect that doesn't come with conditions. I deserve peace that doesn't come at the cost of my sanity. Silence is not empty, it's sacred. It's where your healing begins. It's where your truth rises. It's where your power returns. Not in the noise of desperate hope, but in the quiet acceptance of what's real. Let's sit with that truth a little longer, because it's not about bitterness, it's about coming home to yourself. There comes a time in every relationship, whether romantic, familial, or even friendship, when you realize that no matter how much you explain, no matter how patiently you speak, nothing actually lands. Your words float in the air, heavy with truth, but they never seem to reach the other side. So you try harder, you explain again, this time more gently, maybe more clearly. You try to be reasonable, even when you're breaking inside. You soften your tone, shrink your needs, phrase your pain in ways that are palatable, so the other person won't feel attacked. You think, if I can just find the right words, maybe they'll understand, maybe this time will be different. But the pattern continues. You speak, they deflect. You express, they minimize. You cry, they shut down. You ask for change, and instead, you end up apologizing for how you asked. And so you start to see the truth. It's not that they don't understand, it's that they don't want to. That's when silence begins to bloom, not out of anger, but out of clarity. You stop repeating yourself. You stop begging to be heard in a room where no one's listening. You stop performing emotional CPR on a connection that flatlined long ago. Because here's the thing. Some people only respond when you remove your presence. Some people only recognize the impact of your voice when it's no longer echoing around them. And silence does something that words never could. It stops the pattern. It interrupts the dance. It says, I will no longer participate in my own depletion. You're no longer trying to teach someone how to treat you. You're showing them, with your absence, that you've learned to treat yourself better. And maybe they'll notice. Maybe they won't. But that's no longer the point. The point is that your silence becomes a boundary, a mirror, a line in the sand. It says, I will not keep bleeding in hopes that you'll finally care that I'm wounded. Breaking cycles doesn't require loud declarations. It doesn't require one final explosive conversation. It only requires one moment where you choose peace over performance, where you finally say, not with words but with energy, this stops with me. Silence is not revenge. It's protection. It's not bitterness. It's self-preservation. And slowly, quietly, the pattern begins to unravel, not because you fought harder, but because you stopped fighting for what was never willing to meet you halfway. Let's hold space for that truth, because sometimes the most revolutionary thing you can do is nothing at all. Some people never take you seriously until you stop speaking. They mistake your kindness for weakness. They grow accustomed to your emotional labor, your constant checking in, your willingness to explain, to fix, to stay, and over time they begin to expect it. Your effort, your forgiveness, your availability, like it's owed to them. You become the safe place they never have to earn, the soft landing they treat like a convenience, not a gift. They think you'll always be there, because you always have been. But something happens when you finally stop speaking, when the calls go unanswered, when the "are you okay" messages don't get sent, when you don't show up with open arms after another emotional storm they created and left you to clean up. That silence, it disrupts everything. It's no longer about punishing them, it's about saving you. And they feel that. They feel it not because you've said something cruel, but because you've stopped saying anything at all. Your silence forces them to sit with themselves, with the weight of what they did, with the realization that they're no longer entitled to your energy. And that's the thing. They were comfortable with the version of you that tolerated less, not the one who finally demanded more, by walking away from the chaos. And here's what most people never tell you. The scariest version of you is not the one who yells, not the one who cries, or begs, or tries to be understood. It's the version of you that goes quiet, the one who doesn't argue anymore, the one who's not waiting for closure or clarity, the one who already made peace with the fact that nothing will change, because your silence is not an absence, it's a message that says, I've reclaimed my space, my peace, my power, and I will not be returning to the version of me who tolerated this. And yes, it will shake them, not because they lost control over you, but because they lost access to the you that kept trying. Your silence becomes their mirror, and not everyone can handle their own reflection, but that's not your responsibility anymore. Your job is not to stay soft for people who keep cutting you with their sharp edges. Your job is not to remain accessible to people who treat your heart like it's disposable. Your job is to protect your peace, even if that means walking away quietly, even if that means letting them sit in the silence they created. Because the moment you go quiet, they don't hear silence, they hear consequences. And you finally hear yourself. There's a specific kind of ache that comes from begging to be loved, not just loved in a surface way. No, it's deeper than that. It's the ache of asking someone to see you, really see you, and feeling like you're invisible. The ache of explaining your pain, and watching someone blink back at you like it's inconvenient. The ache of holding out your heart with both hands, praying they don't drop it again, and watching them walk away like it's nothing. Begging, over time, doesn't just bruise your soul, it erodes it. It teaches you to believe your needs are too much. It convinces you that love is earned through effort, not freely given. It makes you think, if I can just be more patient, more forgiving, more understanding, maybe they'll finally treat me right. But the truth is, begging doesn't lead to love, it leads to self-abandonment. And here's the thing, no one talks about enough. When you constantly beg to be chosen, you stop choosing yourself, you lose your voice, you silence your instincts, you give away the pieces of yourself that were never meant to be negotiable, until one day, you can't do it anymore. You wake up tired, not just physically, but emotionally drained, in a way that no amount of sleep can fix. You stare at your reflection, and barely recognize the person who kept settling, shrinking, pleading, and instead of one more message, one more attempt, one more please, you choose silence, not out of pride, not to be cold, but because something inside you finally whispered, enough. And that silence,
It hurts at first.
let's not pretend it doesn't, because when you've wrapped your identity around someone else's approval, the absence of their attention feels like suffocating. But that silence, it starts to heal you, slowly, quietly, in ways you didn't even know you needed. It gives you space, space to grieve, space to breathe, space to feel the full weight of everything you were carrying for someone who never once offered to hold it with you. In silence, the begging stops, and in that stillness, you begin to hear something sacred, your own voice returning, the voice that says, you were never too much, you were never asking for too much, you were just asking the wrong person. And little by little, your silence becomes your safety, a refuge, not because you're hiding, but because you're healing. You're choosing peace over proximity. You're learning that love doesn't require proof, it requires presence. And if someone can't show up for you without being begged to, they don't belong in the sacred space of your life. Begging left scars, but silence starts to stitch them closed. And you begin to rise. People think silence is the easy way out, that you went quiet because you couldn't handle the confrontation, that you disappeared because you're passive aggressive or dramatic. But if they only knew, silence is not weakness, it's strength. It's the strength to not explain yourself again, to not chase what's not chasing you, to not respond when every part of your heart is screaming to be heard. Because the truth is, it's easy to fight, it's easy to stay in the storm, to keep arguing, to keep demanding the love you know you deserve. But what's hard, what's gut-wrenching, is choosing to walk away while your heart is still attached. Silence is not the absence of love, it's the presence of self-respect. It's choosing your peace over their confusion. It's choosing clarity over chaos. It's choosing yourself, even when you miss them, even when it hurts. And yes, it will hurt. God, it hurts to let go of the people you wanted to believe in, to stop trying for the person you thought would eventually come around. It hurts to pull back when all you wanted was to be held closer. But the moment you stop screaming to be seen and start standing in your silence, you begin to see yourself again. You begin to understand that love should never require you to break your own heart. And the moment you go quiet, not to punish, not to provoke, but to protect your soul, is the moment you become your own savior. Your silence says what your words couldn't. I've tried, I've cried, I've bent, begged and broke, and now I choose me. It's not a goodbye screamed into a void. It's a goodbye whispered to your own reflection. The one that finally says, we're not doing this anymore. Not like this. Never again. That is not weakness. That is bravery. The kind of bravery that doesn't get applause. The kind that happens in the middle of the night, when no one is watching, and you're curled up with your pain, but still refusing to go back to what broke you. Silence is the strongest goodbye you'll ever say, because it's the one where you stop asking someone else to give you closure and give it to yourself. And in that silence, you'll find the beginning of everything you thought you lost: your voice, your strength, yourself. Conclusion. So here we are. You've begged, you've explained, you've tried to love louder, harder, deeper, just hoping someone would finally meet you there. But all it did was drain you. And maybe you thought your silence would make them angry. Maybe you were afraid they'd call you cold, distant, heartless. But here's the truth. They'll never admit. Your silence terrifies them, not because it's cruel, but because it finally puts the mirror in front of them. Because silence says what your words couldn't. I loved you, but I love me more. I hoped for you, but I won't beg for me. I waited, but I'm not waiting anymore. Your silence is not a punishment. It's a boundary. It's the sacred line between who you were when you tolerated the pain and who you're becoming now that you've walked away from it. And this isn't about being bitter. This is about being brave. It's about knowing that even though your voice trembled in every goodbye you never got to say out loud, you still chose yourself. And that matters. That changes things. Because real healing doesn't come from proving your worth to people who made you question it. It comes from finally looking in the mirror and saying, I was never too much. I just kept giving too much to people who gave me too little. So don't ever think your silence is weakness. Don't ever mistake your quiet for giving up. You didn't quit. You awakened. You remembered who you are. And you chose to live in the truth of that, even if it meant standing alone for a while. And trust me, standing alone in truth will always be better than begging and lies. So stay silent, stay strong, stay soft, and most of all, stay true. Because the most powerful thing you will ever do is finally stop speaking the language of pain and start living the language of peace.